Putting something like steroids on the skin is probably considered easier than diving into this a little bit deeper, but it is the work that gives back again and again for the rest of their life. And it is the best gift that you could give your child to do this work now with them, to set their body up, their immune system up for the rest of their life to function, in a more balanced way.
Hey beautiful, welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self-love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things energetics, emotions, and self-awakening, Jenna Smith. And today's conversation is one that I have a feeling is going to bring so much clarity, so much hope, maybe some answers to many families who are navigating just chronic skin struggles. I am honored and to welcome Abbie Bradford to the podcast today. She is a holistic nurse, a clinical herbalist, master integrative practitioner with over a decade of experience supporting families through complex chronic conditions. She's also the founder of Eliminating Eczema, a program dedicated to helping heal from eczema through a true root cause, whole body approach. I cannot wait to hear about this program. And just learning a little bit about Abbie, getting ready for this recording, I respect so much that her work starts from a physiological first lens. She blends clinical insight with natural medicine in a way that just feels grounded and empowering. And I cannot wait to hear more about her story, her practice. So it's going to be such a rich and eye-opening conversation. I just know it. So Abbie, welcome. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have this conversation. My whole goal with this, really, when I talk about eczema, is to help families get clarity around all of the noise. Because if they're listening to this, likely there has been a lot of Google searching, a lot of late nights wondering, what's going on. And I feel like there can be so much noise in this space and kind of what to do and what's actually going on. And maybe this is their first step. So I would love for this conversation just to be super, super valuable. And that's really my main goal.
Absolutely. And you, hit the nail on the head for me, because I was that person. I don't want to get too far ahead for the conversation, but just with my son, and he's had some skin struggles, and those late night Google searches, like this could be a plethora of things, and then following your mom intuition, following what the doctor might be saying, and all the things. So excited for this conversation. But let's start with you. Okay. Can you share a little bit about just your story and what drew you into holistic nursing, herbalism, and just like that path to pediatric eczema and root cause skin healing?
Yeah, I think some practitioners that work with kids, maybe a lot of them were drawn to it by their own children, and that was not my story, actually. So to back up, I was just in the kind of regular medical field. To make this a really short story, because it is long, I got into holistic medicine through my own journey, of course, and just really had a lot of struggles. And I saw very quickly that I wasn't going to be able to continue to be in a world where we were just going to keep slapping band-aids on things and not really address what was going on. Because once you see the truth of what's really underneath, you can't unsee that. And if you're working in that, it becomes this push-pull of like almost an ethical, moral thing where your body and your mind is like, okay, I need to actually do something in the world where I feel like I'm contributing to the spread and the help of this like true healing, what I consider. And so through my practice throughout the years, I really started to feel the pull to work more with children. Now, I was already working with children. I had a practice where I was seeing kind of everyone and everything, and that was great. But I had one particular case come to me, and he was a toddler. He had eczema, and it was a little bit more severe than kind of the average case. And so he really, I can't even describe him to you because he just changed everything for me. He had this sparkle in his eyes that I just had to help him. And I don't say that lightly to be like dramatic. I mean, literally, he was a catalyst because I was able to see not only what families are going through with eczema, meaning that they're not getting answers. They're going to the doctor and the doctor is saying, these are your quote unquote solutions, your things that you can utilize. You know, most people know that's pretty much only steroids. And if that doesn't work, then they start talking about injections and they'll even say as far as a 6-month-old baby can take these injections. And the moms that I talk to know that they don't want to do this, right? And so this particular family, when they came to me, they were, you know, he wasn't the most severe case I've ever seen, but they were kind of like, we know there's something else going on here and we're not getting answers. And so it really opened me up to what happens in this cycle of going to the doctor and getting these steroids and saying you don't want the steroids. Well, there's not really another answer. And these families are struggling, struggling. Eczema is not just a skin condition. It can go into every area of life. And we can talk more about that. But essentially, I had to really dig in and find out what's going on here because I couldn't apply just my regular like gut health knowledge. I was already a gut health expert. And I think some families will find this out when they go to someone who doesn't specialize in eczema. The outcome isn't always great. I mean, they will do everything they can within like their own knowledge, but I had to get a lot of extra training and mentorship and dig into the research and have a lot of experience to come to the place where I feel like I have a really good grasp on eczema and to the point where that's all I live and breathe. That's all that we do. We have a team. Like this is all that we do because I really believe that there's a huge, huge need here. And the need is beyond physical health. Honestly, it goes into children's ability to be who they're supposed to be in the world. It can literally take away the joy and the peace and the happiness and just the childlike nature that they naturally have because they're dealing with this thing physically. So that's where my passion stems from. It started personal. It turned into this need and this pull to really work with children because there's something there that lights me up entirely. But I think it goes, and again, not trying to be dramatic, I really feel this. It goes global. Like this is our future generation, right? And so helping them now is the best thing that we can possibly do to set all of us up for the future.
Oh my gosh, I just relate so much. I mean, you're talking about eczema, but just thinking to a root cause approach. I mean, sharing your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was also me. Like I worked in oncology, I worked in the healthcare system. I saw, when you said like it almost comes to that boundary of like the ethical, the moral, because it's like you can't unsee what you've already seen, and I use this all the time. And I work with people in like mental health and addiction and just kind of overcoming like those emotional root causes, right? Like rather than giving medication, not saying that there's never a time and place, but let's get underneath that band-aid. Let's get underneath that surface level to really get to the root cause of why we are responding the way that we are. So that's just so beautiful because everything that you just explained it's like the umbrella of the collective. It's in terms of that root cause piece. And I just love I already love where this conversation is going. So you speak of the 4 pillars, to resolve eczema for good. So inside your work, you teach these 4 pillars and they must be like addressed, right? So can you kind of break down what that means and just explain why each is crucial and all those things?
Yeah, this is really where we get to the meat of how to address
Yeah.
eczema, but to really understand what's going on. Because unfortunately, when families go to their doctor, they are not getting someone who understands what's going on with eczema. And for some, that might be hard to believe because they're put on this pedestal of they know all, and we put all of our trust in them a lot of times. And if you're in the holistic field, maybe not so much anymore sometimes, but they are very smart. They are doing everything they can, and I believe that. It's just that they are not taught what is actually going on with eczema, what the connection is, and then if you don't know what's actually going on, you can't truly fix it.
Mhm.
And so, in order to really figure out what's going on here, we have to do a couple things. So, the four pillars are remove triggers, test, don't guess, remove the barriers, and then damage control. So let's go into each of those briefly. So the first one really is just about kind of like the controllables, because there are things with eczema that are going to trigger eczema that are coming from the outside a lot of times. And so that means that even though eczema is really an inside job, and I'll get to that,
Mhm.
the outside piece is really that there are some things with diet, with lifestyle, with the environment that can trigger inflammation that can make eczema worse. So, dairy in the research is one of those things that, and in our clinical experience too, that we see that can contribute to a lot of inflammation when a body is already in that state. Now, that doesn't mean that dairy needs to be villainized forever, and our goal is always tolerance later on. But that's one of those things that can be controllable. We can control that in the meantime while we're healing that internal piece. And so the next piece that we think about are lifestyle things, right? Like things that it can be anything that is abstract, like even just the nervous system state of mom and how that relates to baby and or the child, and different things in our water, like how we filter that in a bath filter and things like that, and to the environment, thinking about, and we'll get into this a little bit more as far as like how we test, but we're thinking about environmental molds inside the home that can really contribute to a lot of this as well. And so those are some of the more controllable pieces that we start with normally, because we're waiting to get some testing, and they're just the things that we can act on right away. And sometimes those things can get you really, really far alone. We only see, as far as diet goes, like 30% of the time, diet really, really makes skin changes. And sometimes they can be dramatic. But sometimes parents will say, well, I already did that. I took gluten out, I took dairy out, and those are our two biggest ones, and they didn't do anything. And that may be the case on the surface. It is changing something internally, usually, but it doesn't mean that it's going to get us all the way there. And so a lot of parents stop there. They stop right there and they say, okay, I've tried everything. I've changed their diet. I've changed my laundry detergent. I've changed all these things that could be coming into their body, triggering all of this. And they say it didn't work. Well, that's because we're only addressing one of the pillars.
Mhm.
And so we need to keep going. And so when we look at eczema and we're seeing like, okay, there's this thing on the skin that's showing us that something is going on. And we a lot of times kind of get caught up in treating it that way as well. I mean, obviously that's what the Western docs are doing, right? They're just looking at it as a skin problem, and you put a steroid, which is going to suppress the inflammation on the skin and the immune system on the skin, and sometimes that can work. But we really have to go internally because of this next pillar, testing two different areas. And so we're thinking about really eczema is an immune system issue. And where does the majority of the immune system live? We know that 70% or more of it lives in the gut. And so we need to test and see what's going on with the gut and see what in the world is there. How are the good bacteria? Are there things that shouldn't be there? We see pathogens and parasites and things all the time in kids. And we see overgrowths, and we see these just immune imbalances that you can measure on a good stool test. You can measure these things. And so there is a ton of research actually correlating the gut issue, or say gut immune system, with skin. So we know that that skin gut connection is really strong. And when there are these overgrowths or things that shouldn't be there in the gut, that can come through the skin. And the reason for that is because a lot of times our little bodies, these children, they can't handle a lot of what's going on internally. And so the skin is used as kind of like a default organ. It's kind of like that emergency exit route.
Mhm.
And so if it's coming through the skin, often it can't get out in these other ways. So back to the stool test, we're going to do that and see what is going on there. And that is a ton of information on its own right there. The other thing that is really underlying eczema is that I kind of just mentioned that these little bodies can't handle all of this. And so if we think about, each person has a bucket essentially of like what they can handle.
Yeah.
And that bucket size is based on the body size, the age of the person, and genetics a little bit. And so sometimes we see with, children with eczema, their maybe genetically they have a little bit smaller of a bucket, but it's small anyways because they're small typically.
Mhm.
Now, we work with children, up to 17, and so obviously there's adult eczema too, but most of the time eczema is going to show in the first year of life, essentially. And so these tiny bodies are just overloaded with all kinds of byproducts and from what's going on internally. But then if we've got external things coming in that are kind of toxins in the world, that can really overload them too. And so that's the other piece of our testing. We really look at one of the big ones is urine mycotoxin testing because mycotoxins come from mold. We breathe them in. And when that is in our internal environment, which is very unnatural, that can cause a lot of havoc on the system. It can turn the immune system in a way that is not really good for the system.
Mhm.
If you think about a small little body that, their immune system is really coming online, it's learning, it's trying to decipher what's self and what's not self in the first, especially 2 years of life. And so when that's happening, and we've got something like mold and mycotoxins that are kind of getting in the way, it's information that's changing how the immune system is coming online. And so a lot of times you will see a lot of food allergies with kids that have a lot of mycotoxin exposure. Now, not every single kid that has food allergies has mycotoxin exposure, but it's a big correlation.
Mhm.
So those are the two systems, the immune system essentially in the gut, and then the detox systems through the urine that we're looking at to test. So I want to just pause there because that was a lot. Do you want me to keep going or do you have any questions?
Yeah, no, this is great because you mentioned, I think, very briefly, or maybe before we started recording, just in terms of how much of an internal expression, eczema is and how the body is communicating through the eczema. So keep going. I love this.
Okay. Okay. So that is the main thing. And I don't know exactly where your audience is at as far as like, do they know that it's like more of an internal issue, or is this the first step of realizing it's more than steroids? But I hope this is kind of beneficial to anyone who's coming in on this journey. But that is absolutely the first step, is that we have to know that the skin is a window to the inside environment.
Mhm.
So the next piece, the next pillar essentially is to remove barriers. And so we're really just helping the body to get rid of the things that it's currently not able to. We need to coach up their detox function, coach up their nutrient status. And the main thing, the premise behind all of this that I like to remember is that the body always wants to heal. It always wants to heal. And so my question is, what is in the way that is not allowing the healing? And it's usually as simple as that. Now, the answer is not always super straightforward, but it's usually get the things out of the way that it doesn't have, or that it has, that it wants to get rid of.
Mhm.
Give it the things that maybe it's lacking a little bit. That could be nutrients or otherwise. And usually you just let the body do its thing and you don't need to suppress anything. You don't need to change the immune system, with steroids and that sort of thing. The other option that I mentioned is like an injection when steroids don't work anymore. That is trying to block inflammation. It's not a steroid, it's called Dupixent. But that can block inflammation. Again, we don't need to do those things when we're actually getting rid of the problem that the body is having, if that makes sense. And then the last piece we're really thinking about is damage control. So there's a lot that happens, when, especially if there is a mold exposure, that's dampening the immune system a little bit, but even thinking about gut function and healing up that gut lining. And there's just a lot of damage control that we want to do. And there's a skin barrier too. So we can do this with topicals, we can do this with nutrients, we can do this with certain things to help their cellular membranes come back online and be intact. And I don't want to get too nerdy here, but those are some of the things that we're doing internally and a little bit externally as well to make sure that we are really helping the body to kind of heal from
Yeah.
this onslaught of what happened. And really that's where we start to talk about maintenance too, and kind of how do we keep this in a really good spot.
Yeah, and get as nerdy as you want to, because anyone listening to this podcast knows how much that I just, yeah, you have your passions, you have your niche, if you want to say that, but like you just excel and you could just get lost in it, right? But I just love, like, I want to really bring this full circle parallel because you said, like, I hope this isn't, too much, or you use so much terminology again that I use. Like I'm always saying, like our bodies innately, like we innately want to heal. Our bodies want to heal. So you're coming at this from just a different standpoint. You mentioned the bucket. I talk a lot about like nervous system capacity, using that cup. Like if we're at the brim of this cup, you can't add anything else. Insert, fight, flight, freeze, like all these things. So I just love how you, like everything that you're communicating and talking about, I'm just bridging that gap with the work that I do too in root cause therapy. So beautiful. Okay, so I have a question for you. Like say, you go to the doctor, they're offered creams or these surface level solutions. Let's say they used them. What is that doing within the body? How is that? Yes, maybe it's suppressing those surface level symptoms, but maybe using your four pillar approach, kind of what would that next step be? Because now mom might be like, well, shoot, am I doing this wrong? I just want to help my child heal. Kind of how do you, I'm sure maybe you have clients come in like midway, be like, we did this stuff. What is this doing now internally? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I mean, we know that anything topically is going to be absorbed internally as well. And so the really frustrating thing I think about steroids is that I don't think true informed consent is given to most parents as far as what they're giving their child, the long-term possible effects of that, and what it actually can do inside the body. And I don't want to totally scare people because there may actually be a time and place for a little bit of steroids, I think if steroids are going to be your only route, I don't believe that that is ever going to be a solution. But maybe it's so extreme that we just need to get a little bit of relief in there. And this is like, we work with anyone who has been on steroids, is on steroids, never wants to use steroids. Like we're not against them in that way. We just want to help you get to a place where those are no longer needed, or we don't even have to talk about that because we don't
Yeah.
need to suppress. But to go back to your question, essentially, steroids are going to, on the skin, they can feed fungal issues. So same thing if like, when I was working with women, if they were taking like birth control or had any sort of steroids in their birth control is not steroids, but that's just one example
Mhm.
of hormones. If you're taking steroids as well orally, we know that that feeds fungus internally, and that can lead to fungal issues. On the skin, it can exacerbate and feed fungal issues on the skin, and eczema has a big, big, big correlation with fungal issues. So that's just one thing alone. And sometimes when parents have tried steroids and it makes it worse, that's a big sign to me that there are some fungal issues going on because it's not even suppressing, it's just feeding at that point.
Mhm.
It will suppress some of the immune system, and that's why it works. And so we think about long term on the skin. I mean, we probably don't want to do that to anyone, let alone a small, small child whose immune system is just coming online. And also, the other thing that happens is that steroids, they're hydrocortisone, which is essentially cortisol. Cortisol is something that our body makes itself,
Mhm.
but in excess, in long term use, what that does is it can affect the adrenals, even in children,
Mhm.
even if it's just topically, and that can suppress some of the adrenal activity essentially. And so short term, you are suppressing inflammation, and really short term, that can be totally fine because that's what cortisol does in our body as well. Short term, it suppresses inflammation, but long term, you're talking about suppressing a system in the body that's really, really important. You need your immune system to be online, and your adrenals are really important as well. I mean, cortisol, if you don't have it, you literally can't live. So it's not going to press it that low, but we're thinking about small children here, right? We're thinking about doing something to their system that is reversible, but it can definitely do some damage. And I don't think that's benign. I think that needs to be told to the parents when they are given this. And I don't think parents are given that. And the
Mhm.
last thing I'll say about this is that because I know someone will be listening to this that maybe have heard of or experienced topical steroid withdrawal, and TSW is a real thing. And what that means is when you use steroids for a period of time topically and you all of a sudden stop using them, the immune system has this rebound effect that can be really horrible to get over.
Mhm.
And it causes these really dry, flaky, irritated, red patches of skin that takes a long time to get over. And there's a lot of things we can do internally, but time is part of that too. And so if parents are at that stage where they've utilized steroids, they stop utilizing them, they realize that it may be a TSW situation, that is difficult because you essentially thinned out the skin barrier and the skin barrier needs to really reheal on a lot of levels too.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of implications there.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. It could because I mean, you work on a very bio individualized scale, right? Like, yes, you have your pillars, but then each case is different. So I thank you for just kind of diving into that a little bit. But also kind of to now piggyback off of this with for parents listening or anyone listening right now, like maybe they're in that overwhelmed state or they feel exhausted, like maybe discouraged too, like they're going to the doctor and they're not, they just have this feeling that they're not seeking or they're not getting, what they actually are needing. So what are some like foundational steps that
Mhm.
you can bring and help like implementing that support for their children, for themselves?
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot that you can do before you think about doing anything that's going to be more resource driven, right? Like
Yeah.
hiring someone, getting testing, that sort of thing. So if
Mhm.
we really think about that first pillar and all of those controllable things, some of those things are free. It might take a little bit of work because we need to alter what's coming in a little bit as far as, diet goes. If you haven't tried getting rid of gluten and dairy in their diet, that's one of the biggest things. So I already talked about dairy, but gluten is one of those things that when the gut lining is inflamed, it definitely can contribute to more inflammation. And we do see on testing that some kids are mounting an immune response to it as well, which is going to drive eczema further. So gluten and dairy can be something that I know for some people that might be a really big step because it's a big part of their diet and what they give their child. But thankfully now there are a lot of swaps out there that we can utilize in order to kind of shift over. But I think that's one of the first things that's easy. And then thinking about anything that's coming in or on their skin, their body. So like all of the things that we're using to put in the laundry, our cleaning supplies, and maybe thinking about a bath filter, which I think is pretty accessible to most people.
Mhm.
Those are going to probably be the biggest hitters. I would say also a drinking filter, a good drinking filter, not just like a little pitcher in the fridge.
Mhm.
Um, those things are going to be probably the biggest bang for your buck because think about how much water we're exposed to, right? Like how much water we drink, how much water we bathe in, and then all the clothes that we're wearing and the laundry and that sort of thing. And ideally, we can kind of, get that to be more of like all of the things in the home that are considered, cleaning supplies, but you don't have to just go and throw out everything. Like, you don't
Right.
need to just overhaul everything overnight, but start to think about those key areas. And then when you're buying new, start to think if you're not already about making sure that those things are the least amount of toxins as possible because it really is a bucket analogy and
Mhm.
everything can go into that bucket. So we want to take everything out that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such I love that answer. I mean, because again, it brings in that the customized, the bio individual piece of being human, right? And you have these controllables like, okay, let's start here. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to bridge. I'm just so fascinated in this work because we talk obviously this show very much about, unprocessed emotions and how that could now, be seen in like repeating patterns in life or addictive patterns, habitual cycles, self-sabotage, all the things, mental health. So, do you see a connection between like children's emotional environment, stress load, you brought up cortisol already, and these flare patterns? Like, is that one of the controllables that you kind of dive into? Would that be more
Mhm.
like damage control? Like, kind of where do you put the emotional development, emotional perspective on this?
Yeah, I absolutely love that you brought this up because it can be one of those things that doesn't feel as tangible. It's a
Right.
little bit more abstract and it's like, well, how much does this really play into it? Any parent that has a child with eczema will know that if it's more on that like maybe moderate and higher end, usually always when that child is angry, hungry, bored, crying, whatever it is, those heightened emotions a lot of times, that is going to cause them to itch, sometimes to flare, sometimes they'll get new patches just from that. And
Mhm.
so we know that there is a very big correlation from the nervous system to the immune system. So that tells us that if we can help their nervous system, we can help their immune system. And it's not like taking a supplement or, eating a certain food, but especially in children younger than 3, but even younger than 7, we know that mom's state of her nervous system is directly tied, and we could even say tandem with that child's nervous system.
Mhm.
And I don't know how much you talk about this on here as far as children, but basically, children, I mean, they have no ability under the age of 3 to regulate their own nervous system.
Mhm.
It's just not in their ability, it's not in their wiring yet. They haven't learned it. And so, anytime that they feel like their emotions get out of control, they're usually going to express them. And as much as we can, we want to help that expression or a healthy expression, but mom is the regulation tool,
Yeah.
essentially. Mom is the one that is able to, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can literally be you holding your child, swaying, humming, singing, um, just bouncing with them. If they're a little bit older, then thinking about playtime and dance and just helping them to kind of regulate in this emotionally expressed way.
Mhm.
And I think, sounds too simple sometimes. And we're like, how could that really do anything? But those are the things that children need in order to feel safe, in order to feel like their emotions are safe, and therefore for their immune system to not feel unsafe as well. There are other ways the immune system can feel unsafe, but if we can help that nervous system piece, it is huge, and it does start with mom. And one thing I like to put in here is that sometimes we think about nervous system as far as like emotions and big emotions. But for mom, we're thinking about even things like her phone and what's happening when she's around her child with her phone. Does she have notifications on all the time? Is she constantly back and forth with her phone? Is she constantly being distracted and pulled away from? And is that phone dysregulating her nervous system? Because that I see is a huge, huge piece of it
Yeah.
that can be, I want to say, easily remedied, although I think it's so ingrained in a lot of our lives that that's difficult. But that is something I recommend for moms that especially if they're in a very hard season, with their child, that you regulate your phone time
Mhm.
hard. That should be a hard boundary. And again, something that's like, does it really matter? I guarantee you, if you do something about it, you will feel a shift. And I've had a lot of people tell me that they didn't realize how much it was affecting their own nervous system to be pinged all the time or to feel like they needed to check things all the time or whatever that is. So I'll leave that there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a whole other podcast episode in itself. And we've had a lot of conversations on that too, like that instant dopamine hit. You could go down that avenue. You can go down the addictive pattern of it. You could go down, the numbing and how much it's dysregulating your nervous system. So absolutely. Gosh, this has just been so awesome. Like, and thank you for like bridging all of that. That just, yeah, gave me all the feels. So, tell us about your program. Tell us about you, kind of where we could find you, how we can support you, how these listeners can connect with you.
Yeah, so I have a team of practitioners. There's 3 of us that work together. And like I said, we just live and breathe children's eczema.
Yeah.
So it is our specialty. And we get everyone from, we support people that are just starting this journey as far as like they know they don't want to go to their doctor for steroids anymore. And they're really ready to look at what's really going on with their child, to someone that has worked with several practitioners and they've tried things and it hasn't worked. And usually I'll hop on a free call and we'll just kind of dive into what they've already done and kind of part out, what are the missing pieces, because usually there are missing pieces. One thing with eczema too is just that we need to, I think I kind of briefly said this in the beginning, we need to treat this in a way that is special. It's its own little niche, even in the holistic world.
Mhm.
And so we do something that's called the order of operations with our children, meaning that when we implement things, we are not just going after these heavy hitting things. We're not just like pushing detox and doing these crazy things. We're setting their body up to be able to repair and be able to handle some of these things later on. It's nothing extreme, but we do get people that have tried, to do certain maybe antifungals or something like that, and it made them worse. And well, there's a reason for that. We can't really start there. So I'd just like to preface that we do treat this very succinctly, kind of in a method and in a way that works with children's bodies too. So yeah, they can connect with me. Instagram is probably the easiest place, at Abbie Bradford. Abbie is Abbie, but our main like offering is just our program where we dive deep. We give unlimited support. We're there to hold your hand the entire step of the way, and we have a very high success rate with children because I think we do this deeper work, and we do ask parents, to make changes, and it is going to be not the easiest route, meaning that putting something like steroids on the skin is probably considered easier than diving into this a little bit deeper. But it is the work that gives back again and again for the rest of their life. And it is the best gift that you could give your child to do this work now with them, to set their body up, their immune system up for the rest of their life to function, in a more balanced way.
Absolutely. And just in different areas of your life, like you're setting this foundation to get beneath the layers, to ask the questions, to like look at the controllables, look at the lifestyle, when so often we could just pull for medicine or pull for, that surface level fix. So I commend you. And it's so empowering, and the foundations that you're setting within families and children themselves. Absolutely.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for your openness, your work, and just being here with me today. For our listeners, I will link everything in the show notes, where to find Abbie, her Instagram, their website, and I'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here, also holding space for us to have this conversation and doing your own inner listening along the way. So thank you so much again, Abbie, for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And until next week, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. We are sending our love and light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, boop.
Thank you for spending the sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.